One of the great features about this keyboard is the swift ability to So why would you need this exactly? Hi, I'm Marta and this is NotEnoughTECH. Now, if you ever been tasked with writing something huge on mobile using a keyboard of the device or the on-screen keyboard of the Android device, you know how much pain it is in your neck to actually do it. Now, you can bypass it in a couple of ways. For example, if I had a lot of text that I would have to just type it out and copy and paste, usually the Instagram descriptions, I would use Join app to share my clipboard. Now, if that text would require me to enter complicated characters, I would refer to AirDroid and cast the screen on my computer. But now there is a third option, and we're talking about this keyboard. I've talked about this Xiaomi Mi W, or whatever they want to call it in here, so if you want a full review, it's there. But one of the best features of this keyboard is the ability to switch between Android device and a PC in an instant. Now, if you notice and pay attention, this keyboard has something special. It has Bluetooth shortcuts for Android devices. Why would I do this? Why would I go through all the trouble of introducing Bluetooth shortcuts for your essentially apps when most of them can be used online? I'm doing it for work for two reasons. First of all, we have £15 awful keyboards to type on and I can't stand those things. And it is much easier to ask IT department whether you can bring your own keyboard and actually ask them to replace anything on your computer software-wise. So that's the first thing. And the second reason is the efficiency. So instead of wasting my time on playing with my mobile phone, everything is organized, assigned, full of shortcuts, and it works just great. So if you are in a similar circumstances when you have a freedom to do whatever you want as long as it doesn't give a heart attack to your IT department, then consider the shortcuts. Because this shortcut is going to work with any Bluetooth keyboard for your Android device. Obviously, I would recommend you a keyboard like this because you can switch output, so you can stream keys to your mobile device and a second later to your computer, but that's up to you. Right now, I'm going to show you what kind of shortcuts I've got set up and how to achieve this. After experimenting with 3D printer, I've ended up with several designs. So I had a black filament on white, I have a white filament on black, and I have white and black filaments buttons only which got painted. Because I wanted to have a high degree of a custom choice that you can make, I've printed the buttons separate to the lip. To put it back together, I've used a little bit of super glue after arranging the icons in a correct order. On my phone, Xiaomi Mi 9, I could simply use Lockcut to intercept the keys I'm sending via Bluetooth keyboard. So if you just run the bubble and start capturing Lockcut entries, you'll be able to see the keys as a key code event. So I've pressed the 8 number a couple of times, and if you filter for key code, you'll see this available there. Unfortunately, on my Google Pixel phone, I was not able to use the same system. As you can see, if I'm gonna run Lockcut and try to replicate the number 8 a couple of times and look up the entries, there'll be nothing indicating me that I'm pressing the Bluetooth keys on the connected keyboard. So what I had to do is just to refer back to auto input. So if you can't see the keys in Lockcut, just try auto input instead. So first thing that you want to do is to enable the auto input access, and you can do it by trigger, which is Bluetooth trigger. When the keyboard is connected, just use auto tools secure setting to set accessibility service for auto input to enable, and once the keyboard is disconnected, then obviously disable that. Now, if you can't use the lock cut, you'll be using auto input, and your key interception will look something like this. So this is your lock cut one, and if you want to use let's cancel this. And if you want to use your auto input keys, then you have to use the auto input action. And then you'll see that in key action, obviously we're gonna respond on key down. In some circumstances, key up. They all gonna be the same as with a lock cut. I'll show you where. And instead of detecting key codes, we're gonna be selecting the keys we want to use. So if you, for example, for this one, I have a F1 key or F2, sorry, key selected. So that's what you do. And that's the main difference between using auto input and lock cut as your trigger for shortcuts from the keyboard. So let's start with launching apps. If you can see on F2, F3 and F4, I have three different apps that I'm launching. And in order for me to be able to actually launch and disable the app or close the app with a single button, I'll need to detect when the app is launched. So I'm going to be using WhatsApp as an example. So let's start with the trigger. So the trigger for F2, it's the key code 132. So once and also I'm responding on down equals true or down colon 2. So I'm responding when the key is kept down. So when that happens, obviously there's a couple of things I want to do. I want to launch app, or I want to go back to home. And this happens depending whether the app is already open or not. So this is why I have those two if conditions. So if app is not open, then WhatsApp matches 0, the MS WhatsApp variable matches 0, I want to launch app and then stop everything. If the app is open, then obviously I want to return to home and then stop everything. And how I tell whether the app is open is very simple. That's why I have this MS WhatsApp profile, which basically uses app as a trigger, and then I have two profiles to set value 1 to MS WhatsApp variable, and then an exit one that sets the value 0. And that behavior is true for every single application that you want to map and create like a shortcut launch for these apps. And the tasker is the second one example when there isn't much we can do because we cannot monitor tasker with tasker, because when the tasker is open, not everything is working. So with tasker, what I do only is the launch app. And there is no way of me closing it. However, later on you will see that I have a go home button shortcut which I can use to return to home. The keyboard itself that has a go home button, which I can use to go home on the desktop, but it doesn't work on Android devices, so I thought I'm gonna fix it. So you'll see that go home, the actual key is 117 for that action, and all I have to do is just obviously map it to action go home to page 0. So that was quite simple, and now I have this go home button which works great. Now let's talk about the lock screen, because lock screen is an interesting example how to handle holding down Control and Alt screen altogether. So I've mentioned before, when you look at the logcat entry or use it with auto input, you can actually discover whether the press was pressed down or pressed up or stop being pressed. So key code 113, this is my key, and this one was pressed down. But if you can see, if I'm gonna go to same profile for Control and click on here, I have a down false, which means this logcat event was generated when I was letting the key up. So this means I can actually monitor whether the key is up or down. All I need is a variable. So I've created a ms lock screen control plus, which sets ms lock screen control, this is my left control, to 1 when I press it down, and as soon as I release this, it will set this variable to 0. And I have exactly the same thing with Alt. Now Alt is a different key code, it's 57, but the rest of it is exactly the same, so I'm using a separate value to set it to 1 and to set it to 0 when needed. And now to lock, I need to final piece of information. I want that to be locked when I only press delete. Now delete is a 112, and when I'm pressing down on delete, I don't want to discover whether I'm holding it or not, because as soon as I press the delete, I want to check if my ms lock screen alt and ms lock screen control are still pressed down. So if they both are set to 1, I know they are still pressed down, and I can then execute the lock screen action. Now bear in mind that the lock screen will, if you have a smart lock enabled, you will lock the screen. However, any key on your keyboard will unlock it instantly. So this is the best lock screen scenario when you're actually going to disconnect the keyboard or switch it to a computer, so no one could accidentally unlock your phone in a very easy way. So one of the things I really wanted to have was for WhatsApp to have the ability to send the message without switching over to enter is send. I don't like enter is send, so I figured I'm gonna create a similar behavior for enter. So enter is a key code 66, and what I'm doing when the WhatsApp is open, I am going to map extra function to that enter button. So when I click on enter, there's a couple of things happen, and you can map this to different devices like this. So for example, in here I have this for WhatsApp, and I have this for my SMS app. So I'm using auto input action to actually look for that send button on my interface and then press on it, and that will only happen when WhatsApp is open. So I'm actually using that previous profile that monitors whether the app is open or not to detect whether I should send the normal enter or whether I should press and tap on send. Let's talk about MS Play Music. Now the problem with a button, the play button on the keyboard, is that doesn't start the music. You can start the music if the media session is in progress, but it won't start the music on its own. So I wanted to fix this. So what I did is I'm responding to this button, and in this case it's 85, and I want to launch the app. And I want to launch the app only if my music isn't playing, so it wouldn't relaunch the app each time I want to pause and play the music once there is a session in progress. And how I monitor this is with auto notification. Auto notification allows you to intercept, in this case, notification apps that have a media session, and if there is a notification that has a media session, so that information about playback in here, then I'm gonna set this value to MS Music to 1, otherwise to 0, and that way I know if there is no media playing and I want to launch the app first, and then when the media is playing I can just simply control the playback. Now, clearing notifications from your mobile will only work when you expanded the status bar via keyboard, so there is no way you're gonna accidentally press it and delete it, even if you're gonna use the control delete combination elsewhere. So how it works: first of all, I'm detecting the control down and up in the same way as I would with my previous tutorial. So basically I'm using the key combinations and setting a variable. Now once I've got that, to expand this, all I have to do is just go and create, if my control is pressed down, I can expand the status bar, and then I'm gonna set the variable ms status bar to 1, which means my status bar has been expanded by the keyboard. Now if I want to collapse this in a similar way, I'm just checking if the control is still pressed, and then I collapse the status bar and set the variable to 0, so it's no longer expanded by a keyboard. And now delete action, it responds to delete, which is 1112, and when I do this, all I have to do is really, if the control is still down, it's used to auto notification cancel if the status bar was open from my keyboard. Alright, I'll admit, it's a little bit cheeky to have a keyboard like this on my work desk, so don't tell my boss. But I do have a question. What kind of shortcuts you could come up with? I'm interested in productivity shortcuts, is some useful macros that you can come up with while using your keyboard and Android device together. Do let me know in the comments to this video, and if you want to know all the details how to make it work, download the file and receive all the additional information about this guide, head to the description of this video where you see the link to the article and you'll find everything there. So guys, you know the drill. I do not have a posting schedule, so if you want to get notified about new articles or videos, follow me on one of the social media down below. It's up to you which one, because I try to notify every single channel about something new that I post. And if you know how YouTube works, you probably don't have to explain you that symbol with the bell and everything. So I'll leave it to your good hands, and for now I'm just gonna say thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Bye!